What's up, Delaware, and welcome into another edition of DETV Sports. We've got an action-packed show for you tonight. We are live from our Wilmington studio, Nick Alessandrini, and now joined by a special guest here from the Draft Review, Matthew Maurer. Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time to come join me here tonight. We got a lot of stuff to talk to, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. Been a big fan. Watched this many times on my computer. So I'm happy to make a contribution.
Oh, we're happy to have you here on DETV. We got a lot to talk about. No Jason Call today. He should be back with us on Thursday. But Matthew, again, before we get started, why don't you just talk to everyone real quickly about the draftreview.com and some of the work you do there?
I'm an NBA draft historian. I've documented every player that's ever been drafted since 1950, as well as write scouting reports for the up-and-coming draft. I've been doing this since 1998, so it's been a labor of love as well as a thing I've done. So.
Well, again, we're so glad to have you here on DETV, and I know that we'll probably be joined by you for our NBA special as well as our draft coverage going forward, so we're really happy to have you here. And let's dive right in. We've got some headlines to go over, but before we do it, let's start with the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm wearing the tie today, the one I wore last week. It's been good luck, so we're going to keep it rolling. 8-3 on Saturday for the Fightin' Phils as they now advance to the NLCS. Again, it seems like forever since the Phillies were back into the postseason. They get there this year, and again, just one loss here throughout two series. They're undefeated now at home with the 2 wins at Citizens Bank Park. And Matthew, I'm not sure if you had a chance to check it out, but what an environment at Citizens Bank Park. We knew it was hostile, but having been over a decade since we had a postseason game there, it was quite the environment, quite the crowd. You'll see some of the highlights here, and the Phillies, they're on to the NLCS. Just initial thoughts.
I'm super excited. I mean, this has been a long time. I take it back to my youth when I used to watch them and getting some of that energy back from that time. So Bryce Harper, management, they've done a great job building this team.
And again, some of those trade acquisitions at the deadline, Noah Syndergaard, Brandon Marsh with a big 3-run home run in that game to help give them the victory. Again, it all is going to get started tomorrow night. The Phillies and the Padres, the 5 and 6 seed, going to go at it in the NLCS. The Guardians and the Yankees, the final series that's still in the NLDS. That game 5 is tonight, I believe, getting underway as we're speaking right here. But don't you change that dial. You stay right here to DETV. So again, Padres Phillies tomorrow night, 8:03. We're going to keep watching that one closely. And who knows, maybe the Phils going to make their way back to the World Series. Wouldn't that be something here this season? Now let's transition, Matthew, into some of our football talk. And we're going to start with the Birds. A big win for the Eagles last night on Sunday Night Football. They're able to hold off the Cowboys 26-17. They remain undefeated, the last and still only undefeated team in the National Football League. Jalen Hurts, 155 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, we saw some of that stagnant offense there in the second half. They've been typically slow this season in the second half of football games, but when they needed a touchdown last night, they got it, and they're able to hold off the Cowboys in Philly. Oh,
yeah. I mean, this is like 4th of July, right? I mean, if you're an Eagles fan, you've penciled this in on your calendar. You're ready for the guns and the lights and everything. So this is just, it's a Memorial Day for our Cowboys fans because, look, they can't say anything. They got to be quiet again for a while.
Yeah, we know we had a few in my friend group chat this morning that it was going back and forth all morning. It was we didn't have Dak Prescott. Then last week it was, Cooper Rush is undefeated as a starter. So some excuses there from the Cowboys fans early in this one. Miles Sanders back in the end zone, averaging 4 yards a carry, 71 yards. And then C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Howie Roseman able to trade for him from New Orleans. He had 2 big interceptions last night. And as I mentioned, Cooper Rush's first loss as a starter. And next week, Dak Prescott's supposed to be back and healthy. The Cowboys now 4-2. That NFC East, though, Matthew, is pretty strong with the Cowboys, Giants, and Eagles. How do you expect the Cowboys to do when Dak Prescott comes back next week?
Oh, I think it's vital that he comes back. I mean, at this point, they've got to start getting CeeDee Lamb more involved. I think Schultz was out of this game, so they got to get him back on. And really, he was a great weapon for him last year. He's been kind of quiet this year. Battling injuries. And then Michael Gallup is a guy that everybody was hoping to see some production, but when Dak went down, and Cooper Rush has filled in admirably. You got to give respect for what he's done, but definitely they're going to be a better team with Dak Prescott.
Yeah, again, it was weird when you had Cooper Rush 5-0 as a starter. Some people were maybe arguing you don't want to bring him back yet. You want to keep going with Cooper Rush. Well, now we can get back to earth here. Dak Prescott going to be the starter next week and going forward for the Dallas Cowboys. So did you learn more about the Cowboys last night or the Eagles? I mean, the game to me kind of went almost as expected. I expected it not to be a blowout for the Eagles. I expected Dallas to compete with that strong defense. We saw some flashes of it there. Did you learn more about the Cowboys last night or the Eagles in that 26-17 win?
I think you learned a little bit about both of them. I think I was very impressed with how Hurts was handling that great Cowboys defense. Yeah. And I think the Cowboys know that they've been living off that defense. They now got to start putting some offense to it, or else they're going to be in this situation all year long. So I think both teams, we found out what we needed to know. And I think, hats off to Hurts. I really enjoy seeing Miles Sanders make the contributions this year. That was something unexpected. There was not, you heard about Kenneth Gainwell in preseason and all these sneaky ideas of what, Miles Sanders is going to be replaced. Yeah. And no, he's filled very well this year. And then, again, I'm worried long-term for Dallas because they've got to solve for Ezekiel Elliott at some point. Pollard has been in the background there. So they've got some choices they got to make coming up.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Zeke looked a little bit better in that second half last night, but Tony Pollard, to me, has been the more effective back, as you mentioned, throughout the season so far. Zeke another year older. Pollard's got that quick first step, so elusive when he gets into the open field, a better pass catcher than Zeke, who was a good pass catcher in his day, a few years ago and even now. And we talked before the show, you're a big fantasy football guy. I'm a big fantasy football guy as well. Miles Sanders saying, don't draft me in the preseason. Well, he's making a lot of people angry there because, I've had him the last couple years. Right. I knew he had the talent, just where they going to give him the ball, was going to be able to maintain, stay healthy, and he is off to a great start this year for the Eagles. If you drafted Miles Sanders, you are definitely happy with that selection probably later in the draft. So now let's move to the Packers, who lose again. We'll get some through some of our Week 6 headlines as we get some information from the desk there. Packers, they lose again, Matthew, 27-10, this time to the New York Jets, to the Packers last week in London, and then now they lose to the New York Jets, who we're starting to get some things together, but we're also 7.5-point underdogs in that game that was at Lambeau Field, I believe. So Rodgers, 26 of 41, 246 yards and a touchdown, sacked 4 times. He has a 38.5 QBR through 6 weeks. That's the lowest of his career. So again, having a little bit of a down season. What have you seen from the Packers this year? Are you worried about Aaron Rodgers going forward?
Well, I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to rub some people the wrong way, but I think this was the big difference between Brett Favre when he was with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers clearly is infuriated with how things are. Yeah. When you have young wideouts, he doesn't have patience. You can see on certain throws, he's literally, besides himself. Aaron Jones has not been able to get going. No. Dylan, the other back that's great there, has not been able to get going. There's a real sense of there's no cohesion there with the offense. So I do worry about them long term. I think Romeo Doubs is going to be really good.
I agree with you there. I love Romeo Doubs.
Yeah, I really think he's going to be good. But I also think we also have to give credit where it's due, and that's the Jets. They built through the draft. Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall has been electric this year. And I think all the selections they made in the draft towards the defensive side were starting to bear fruit now. Sauce Gardner playing really well. So, I mean, again, we could say whatever we want to say about the Packers, but also you got to give credit to what the Jets have been able to do building through the draft.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Matthew. Now 2 big wins the last 2 weeks for the Jets as well. And a popular sleeper pick in this game, but the line obviously told a different story. They were still 7.5-point favorites. Didn't matter there as the Jets were able to get the win. Zach Wilson, as you mentioned, starting to get back in a rhythm with that injury that cost him the first 4 weeks of the season. He's now won 2 in a row as the starter since he's been back. Breece Hall, as you mentioned, fantastic. He's going to continue to get better and better, now starting to take a bulk of the workload away from Michael Carter. They're still both actively involved, but Breece Hall getting a little bit more of the workload now. So the Jets going forward here, again, I like what they have done, getting some offensive linemen back as well, getting a little bit healthier. We'll see what they do. Again, that's going to be an interesting division in the AFC East. They got the Bills. They'll probably run away with it. But the Jets, do you see them maybe being on the borderline of a playoff team here this season as we come down the stretch later on?
I hope so. But I think with young teams, there's always going to be that bubble that rookie wall that they call it that will happen with some of these young guys. But I do hope so. It's been a long time since the Jets have been.
Phillies make the postseason. The Jets make the postseason. I'll tell you, New York would be happy. They're going to need that after the Mets letting them down a little bit this year in the MLB postseason. So the Packers 3-3. We'll see how they kind of get their season going. They're in need of a spark somewhere there. Aaron Jones also, as you mentioned, 9 carries in the last game. I would like to see him more involved. I'm an Aaron Jones fan, and A.J. Dillon's a good back. I'm not sure how you feel about how they split the carries, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards Aaron Jones. I think he needs a little bit more of the work there, and we thought he'd be catching a lot more balls this year without Devontae Adams as well, and they're both getting some run, but we'll see if he can get more involved.
And let's also highlight the Packers lost a key guy for Aaron Rodgers in Randall Cobb.
Yeah, that's right.
Who does not look good. Looks like that's going to be a season ending. We're still waiting on news on that, but that's huge for Aaron Rodgers' confidence with some of those guys.
Yeah, and again, they brought him back for that reason, to make him feel a little bit more comfortable. A big week last week for Randall Cobb coming into this Sunday. Again, you don't like to see any injuries. It's getting tougher and tougher, uphill climb for the Green Bay Packers going forward. Let's talk about the team that beat the Packers last week in London, and that is the New York Giants. We sat here, me and Jason McCall, weeks back when they were 2-1, and we're, how are the Giants 2-1? Well, Brian Daboll is doing a phenomenal job leading the way for them. They beat the Ravens. They are 5-1. The Ravens fall to 3-3. Is Brian Daboll the coach of the year right now in your eyes?
Daboll's balling.
Yeah,
he is. I mean, he's done an amazing job with this team. When you think about what Daniel Jones hasn't been able to do because they've been just killed with injuries, Galladay not being there, having to rely on Slayton and some of these other guys. And if you play fantasy, pick up Wayndale Robinson. I think the promising rookie. I think he had 38 yards and a touchdown. I think that's going to be big for them coming up. And just the return of Barkley being fully healthy has been just amazing to watch. I mean, I'm so happy he's been banged up for the last 2 years, and to really see that he's out there running and evading tackles and really putting the team on his back has just been huge for this team. Huge.
And he even said he lost some of his confidence those last 2 years dealing with those injuries. A lot of, if you check social media, taking heat from all over, all the media, social media, and here he is, as you mentioned, now healthy, and it's showing. Those were the reports coming into the season that he feels a lot better here in 2022, 2023, and he looks that way early. I know he's the #1 fantasy running back in terms of fantasy. I think he's up there maybe leading the NFL in rushing as well. He was a few weeks ago. So he has been a huge guy, and again, maybe the front runner for comeback player of the year to this point in the NFL, because Brian Robinson is not eligible because he didn't play last year, but he would be up there as well. He scored a touchdown last Thursday in what might have been the worst Thursday night football game I've ever seen.
Easily.
I mean, me and Jason were talking, we were doing our pregame show before the game, and we were like, Colts and Broncos last week, and now we get the Bears and the Commanders. Let's hope for a good one. It was not a good one, so we'll see what we get on Thursday. But you mentioned it, the wide receivers for the Giants, just depleted wide receiver core. Richie James has kind of been their leading receiver all year. No Sterling Shepard. Kadarius Toney hasn't touched the field since he was a first-round pick in the draft last season for the Giants.
It seems to be in the doghouse.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah.
With those little injuries. And, I mean, from the start of the season, as you mentioned, there were some issues with him not showing up to voluntary workouts and didn't get really on the best side of Coach Daboll and that new coaching staff as they came in. And as you mentioned, they think Wan'Dale Robinson is their guy. They think he's going to play that role that Toney was drafted to play.
Right.
So I think, as you mentioned, he's going to be the guy to pay attention to going forward. And they're going to need to get as much help as they can out of those pass catchers. And again, just more praise for Brian Daboll for doing what he's doing. You mentioned Daniel Jones. We've seen what he's been doing the last couple of years. To be 5-1, Daniel Jones as his quarterback, he's not turning the ball over as much, making better plays, and I think you can attest that all to Brian Daboll.
Absolutely, and also let's give him credit on the fact that he's been invading. He's been getting out of the pocket. He's running. These are things that he was kind of hesitant to do at times. But he's taking full advantage of the situation. I guess he figures, hey, I don't really like anybody I'm throwing to. So
how could you, right? My goodness. We could play receiver for the Giants. Maybe.
Yeah, it's been brutal. It's been brutal.
It's been brutal. And again, he's able to stay healthy this year as well so far, Daniel Jones. So that's good as well going forward for the Giants. Let's now talk to the game of the day, potentially. That was 425 on CBS, and that was the Bills and the Chiefs. What a playoff game those two had last year. Came down literally to the final seconds. This one was very similar. Josh Allen doing what he does best, 329 yards, 3 touchdowns, leading that offense yesterday. And just a quick stat for everybody out there. Josh Allen, if he were a team, would be 6th in the NFL in total yards. Him alone, Josh
amazing.
Allen. You've got the Saints 4th, tied with the Chiefs 4th. They both got 2,294 yards. Josh Allen slides in there at number 5 with 2,237 yards. So he would be, again, by himself, the 5th team in the NFL with the most yards. He, again, might be the MVP frontrunner to where we are right now.
Yeah, I would say that's a no-brainer right there. I mean, Josh Allen's been incredible. The most dangerous thing about him is he's starting to get other weapons involved instead of just Stephon Diggs. He's relying on McKenzie now. He's starting to get Gabe Davis going. And you know, the touchdown he threw to Knox, I mean, you know, Knox has been pretty quiet this year.
Yeah, he has been. I expected him to, bigger role this year, but he's, kind of where we saw him last year.
But what surprised me the most is they actually gave the ball to Devin Singletary in this game, a lot more than they have in the past. Maybe they're trying to build up some trust. There's been some rumors that they might make some moves.
That's right, yeah.
So maybe Devin Singletary feels like he's on the chopping block. I don't know, but maybe that's going to motivate him to push himself this year. But, yeah, great win by the Bills. I'm just amazed that this game, I think, is one of these games that people are going to remember when they get older. They're going to talk about Mahomes and Allen.
Yeah, right.
Just an amazing series.
Yeah, kind of like the Brady Manning from earlier. We're going to see something similar maybe there. And again, maybe if you look down the line, these two teams could also meet here in the postseason. And we know how good that game was last year in the playoffs. Stephon Diggs, you mentioned, 10 receptions, $148, and a score for him. He's just having an absolutely incredible season. Gabe Davis 2 weeks in a row with a big touchdown catch. Yeah. Also here, Von Miller, right? 2 sacks. He was the big addition in the offseason. The Rams were just begging, trying to get him to stay in L.A. after winning that Super Bowl. Buffalo gets him. They're playing him about 30% less snaps. They want to save him for the playoffs. They've been out. They've said that publicly. And then they needed him yesterday. He plays some more snaps. Whenever they need a big play, they just throw him in there. Hey, Von Miller, get in there. He had 2 sacks yesterday on Patrick Mahomes and big places in the game. And then Mahomes throwing that interception to end the game late in the 4th quarter. Going forward, who do you think's got a better chance to make the Super Bowl, Bills or the Chiefs? I know it's early.
I have to go with the Bills right now. I think their defense is just the key part that's different from these two. I think now that the Bills have the weapons offensively, I think defensively is where the big separation is. I think the Chiefs can score on the Bills. I just don't think they can do it consistently. But I do think the Bills can consistently score on the Chiefs.
I agree with you. I agree with you there. And again, that's why home field could be so important come playoff time. I think if the Chiefs have to go into Buffalo, that might be a tough, as you mentioned, that defense at home in the postseason might be a tough task for Patrick Mahomes and company. That you never count Patrick Mahomes out. But a big one there. Some other headlines really quickly. The Steelers beat the Buccaneers. I didn't have it on the rundown. I'm sorry. Dennis wanted to spare you a little trouble. Dennis, a big Bucs fan back there. But the Steelers somehow hold on to beat the Bucs 20-18. Trubisky coming in and leading them to victory. But as we know, Tom Brady, through 6 games, is not really worried about what their record is. That division is what it is. It's not that strong of a division there in the NFC South. He kind of knows what he has to do to get in the playoffs. And once you get in the playoffs, he knows anything can happen. Where are you on the Bucs offense, getting some of these wide receivers, playmakers back? But the defense was the issue a little bit on Sunday.
I think this is the thing, and again, I'm probably not going to say something that's very popular. I think this was the worry with Brady, and maybe Brady's saving it for later on, but when quarterbacks get older, sometimes they can seem to fall off a cliff. We saw this with Peyton Manning. We saw this with Ben Roethlisberger. We saw this with Drew Brees. As they get older, maybe they take more time to take their shots, but eventually I think Tom Brady's due for a slowdown. I think we're kind of seeing some of this, but I also, to be fair to Tom Brady, I also think it's huge that he's getting Godwin back. That's a great piece for them. They did lose Cameron Brate. I hope he's okay. And Leonard Fournette has been amazing for them. He's been one of the most consistent players they've had, and they're still trying to get Cage into the offense. There are times where he looks very into it, and there are times where he doesn't seem like he knows where he's running, which is, I think, either speaks to the complexity of what Tom Brady and the Bucs are running, or maybe Cage is just struggling to pick up some things. But yeah, I think the Bucs, I think they're gonna iron out some of these issues. I think when they get more consistent play from their offensive guys, I think they'll be right in the hunt for the playoffs.
And would you take them to win the division? Right now, they're tied with the Atlanta Falcons. Both of them 3-3. The Saints 1 game behind those two. Do you have the Bucs winning the division?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with
absolutely.
you.
I have no faith in Marcus
I was going to say, I will never, ever say Marcus Mariota is going to win a division. So that is true there. Again, maybe we'll see some Desmond Ridder in the future, but you can't say that right now because the Falcons 3-3, tied for first place in the division, and the only team in the NFL to cover all 6 games this season in Vegas. So the Falcons have played some tough games, including that big win over the 49ers. Sorry, Matthew, on Sunday. Not sure how they pulled that one off either, but they did. So a big win there. And now let's talk a little basketball, Matthew, because tomorrow the NBA season opens up. And we're going to have an NBA season preview here a little bit later on, maybe next Monday when we find some time. But we have to talk a little bit about the action that we are going to see tomorrow night. And it's actually pretty convenient because the Philadelphia 76ers are going to open up the season against the Boston Celtics. 7:30 on TNT, Matthew. The Celtics are 2.5-point favorites in this one. The Sixers got some new additions this year. Tyrese Maxey, hopefully maybe could take the next step here in the next season for him. They got D'Anthony Melton, PJ Tucker, Daniel House, Montrezl Harrell, added some key guys. What do you think about the Sixers' outlook here for this season? And then we'll dive in a little bit more about the season overall. But let's focus on the Sixers here. What do you think of the additions?
Well, obviously, I think the biggest thing they got was better perimeter defense. D'Anthony Melton is a dog.
Underrated guy, right?
Very underrated. There's been a lot of talk that he might get 6th Man of the Year award depending on his play this year. PJ Tucker, I don't think I need to sell anybody on the kind of defense he plays.
And they need a guy like that, right? A fire guy, that kind of leader.
Absolutely. And I think Montrezl Harrell is probably the guy that no one's talking about that I think can give them the best return, because that was the one thing that the Sixers kind of missed, when the name escapes me now, but the gentleman who went to Brooklyn, he was backing up.
I forget his name.
Yeah, I forget. I don't know why I'm forgetting his name, but yeah. He was backing him up, and when Embiid would need a breather, they had no one really there that could really replace that. Montrezl Harrell definitely can do that for them. So I think that's huge for them. I think Daniel House, even though, again, he's a small-name guy, but I think he does a lot of things well. I think he's a great guy, 7th or 8th man off the bench.
3-and-D guy, right? Can give it to you.
Absolutely. Pull up, pop, play a little bit of defense. Don't expect much more than that.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Great return, a good value, a guy that you want on your bench for sure. And then I think Maxey, this is going to be huge for him. He has the talent that is just, I think, superstar.
Yeah.
I think he's going to need to take that big push this year. I think James Harden will help him get there. I think nurture him, give him a little bit of guidance on that. And it's kind of weird because with Maxey going up, I think we're starting to see Harden kind of go down a little bit. I think his star is starting to go down a little bit. But Maxey, I tell you, I'm excited to see what he does this year.
And again, we're on the same page tonight. I'm very excited. Just watching the little bit of action that we got to see in the preseason from him, it already looked like maybe he took another step. The speed has always been there, so quick to the basket. I mean, it's insane. We had a chance to see him up at the Delaware Bluecoats game a few times last year, so that was very cool. And you talked about D'Anthony Melton, and again, NBA draft review, you've done the draft and worked and covered the draft. Coming out of college, he was a guy that, could have been a top lottery pick potentially, and then some transfer stuff and some stuff went on with him, but he was a guy that was highly touted out of high school, and again hoping he can make a big contribution this year to the Sixers. I think he's a perfect fit. I think Daryl Morey made a big move last year on draft night to acquire him.
No, definitely, and I think if there's one thing that the Sixers needed was a guy that they could take off the bench, give him a little bit of bonus on defense, and be able to score. They kind of lost that at times when the bench would have to come out and play. So I think that's one of the biggest things he's going to give you guys this year if you're a Sixers fan. I do think they're going to get a good chance against Boston, too, opening up. Unfortunately, Robert Williams, a.k.a. the Time Lord, is going to be out for 8 to 12 weeks. That's huge for them. He's a guy that I think is so talented on the defensive side. He can win, I think, Defensive Player of the Year. I think he has that type of potential. And having him out for that long is going to be very hard for them.
And again, they've got him on a very team-friendly deal, if I remember correctly. They got him before, he could have demanded a lot more now if he were looking into more money. They got a great deal on him. Again, he's just got to stay healthy. He's a big part for them. And you have to discuss the Ime Udoka situation at least a little bit here. Do you think that has an effect on Boston long term, or even tomorrow night as they open up the season? Because I believe they are the favorites in the East to get to the NBA Finals.
Well, I think it's going to affect them long term.
Yeah.
Short term, these guys are, they have routines, they have rituals that kind of sets their mind. But definitely losing a guy that helped guide you, a team that no one thought could get to the NBA Finals, losing that guy as abruptly as they did, I think is evident. I just don't think it's the way that it can't affect them.
Yeah.
I do believe that Jason Tatum takes a step forward. I think we're still learning how good Brown is. I mean, Brown is already an all-star. I think he has more talent to be even better and more consistent from the outside. So they've got some great pieces there. But I think long-term, losing a guy like Udoka and his defensive ability and the way he's able to look at the game and match up, I think that's going to hurt them long-term. But short-term, I don't see any real huge losses for them.
Yeah, again, they're going to open up tomorrow night against the Sixers here in Philadelphia, or excuse me, in Boston, I should say, as 2.5-point favorites there. You mentioned James Harden a little bit earlier, Matthew. Let's just talk about him for a second. Took a lot of heat last year, right? A lot of people thought he came in out of shape. Not a great series loss to Miami, a team that didn't really have a lot of offensive firepower, and we saw that when they got to the next round there. Kind of led by Jimmy Butler and no one else. But what do you think about James Harden this year? It seems like, or at least the word out of his camp is he's better shape. He took the pay cut, which was a big deal. You don't see that too often in the NBA. Do you see his efficiency going up? I know they want him to distribute a lot more. The Sixers do need him to score a little bit as well. What are you expecting, and what do you think you're going to see out of James Harden this year? Are we going to see that little uptick in efficiency maybe from what we saw last year? Or do you think he's kind of getting older and we got what we got here with James Harden?
I think you got what you got. I think he's going to be definitely a little bit more off the trigger in terms of shooting the ball. I think he's going to probably look to get guys more involved. But I do think he's going to take a little step back from the offense. I mean, Harden, as great as he is in his prime, the truth is he's no longer in his prime.
No, that is the truth.
As much as we all may want him to be in his prime, he's not in his prime anymore. But I give him a lot of credit for understanding that. I think that's what that pay cut was. I think a lot of guys that have had the success he's had would not take a pay cut.
I agree with you.
It hasn't sunk in yet that they're at the sunset of their career. I think he's starting to see that, and I think you're going to see a lot less ego with him. I think he's going to look to help Embiid get that elusive MVP. And
I'll tell you, Matthew, it's been a rough 2 years.
It has.
To get it. I mean, this year I thought this was the year. And again, I'll ask you now. Jokic had an incredible year, and some of the stats that he put up, were almost unmatched. Who was your MVP last season?
My MVP was Embiid. I think with the loss of Ben Simmons, I think he really put that team on his back. Yeah. I know the numbers; they're wilt-like for Jokic, but at the end of the day, you have to reward team success.
Exactly right.
And I don't think that they did that with the MVP award last year. I think they rewarded the stats and the metrics. And the metrics said, yeah, he's got the highest metric and the stats to back it, so that's why we gave him the second MVP award. I do not think he gets another MVP award if they're the same team. If they're the same team.
Oh, I agree with you.
No, shouldn't.
I say Jokic, 2 MVPs. You don't even see that too often, especially back-to-back.
Absolutely not.
Incredible. So yeah, he got his second. So he signed a huge, massive deal there in the offseason. He'll be locked up in Denver. And I know we don't have a lot of time to talk about all the NBA here, but Denver, another team to look out for maybe this year. They got some guys back. Jamal Murray now back in the preseason. He's been out for over a year and a half to almost 2 years now.
Almost 2 years.
So it's been a crazy ride for them. Nashawn Bones-Highland, our boy from St. George's here in Delaware.
That's right.
Giving them a spark there up in Denver. And again, this is just off the fly here, not something we went over before the show. But what do you think about Denver this year? They're a team that a lot of people have sneaking. Them and the Clippers in the West, they have that as a team that can finish maybe in the top 4. What do you see with Denver?
I like that. I think Denver has a good, real possibility. I think the Clippers might have, if they get Kawhi fully healthy and they get Paul George fully healthy, I think they're hard to beat. I think they're going to be one of those teams that would probably match the Warriors in that conference finals.
We're seeing eye to eye tonight, Matthew.
There we go.
But I'm with you 100%. Clippers are the team. Clippers and Warriors. And again, if you remember everyone out there, the Warriors won the championship at the beginning of the playoffs last year. They won at home. So we'll try to keep that streak alive with picking some winners here on DETV. So that's NBA. We're going to dive into a lot more NBA as we get into the NBA season. But now let's focus on the task at hand here tonight, and that is Monday Night Football. So we've had a couple stinkers here. We've been out here on Thursdays and Mondays, but Matthew, we're going to change it up tonight. We're going to have a good game. Let's speak it into existence.
Let's do it.
We're going to have a good game tonight with the Broncos and the Chargers. The Chargers 4-point favorites here at home for the visiting Denver Broncos. Broncos have won 5 out of the last 7 matchups. 2 of their losses, though, have come on the road, where they'll be tonight. Last season, the 2 teams split, and both games were blowouts decided by 15 or more points. So we'll see what we get here tonight. Russell Wilson, Matthew, is dealing with that lat injury. Not sure if you had a chance to watch him so far this season. He didn't miss much. He looks rough out there. The shoulder, I'm not sure if it's hurt or if he's getting a little bit older, as you talked about. What have you seen out of Russell Wilson, and what can we maybe expect to see tonight?
I've seen nothing out of Russell Wilson.
Right? I mean,
Unfortunately, it looks like Seattle was a memory. I don't know what Russell Wilson we're seeing. It's not the Russell we saw in Seattle. I think the biggest thing for him is he's got to remember that you're mobile and you can run out of the pocket. Stop staying in the pocket and forcing passes that aren't there. Extend the offense by either escaping out of the pocket and giving your wideouts time to make plays, or pick up 5-10 yards, slide, and play the next down. For some reason, that has escaped him. It's amazing.
Matthew, it's like we've known each other for years. I've been preaching that for 6 weeks coming in. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not sure if he's trying to stay more healthy, but it's completely been dissolved out of his game. We've seen it not at all this year. We're seeing some of the rushing props for Russell Wilson at around 9.5 yards. That is something we're not used to seeing out of him. And especially if that shoulder's a little banged up, like the reports out of his camp in Denver are, maybe you do want to try to tuck the ball, get out of bounds. That's one of the things that he's been so good at, as you just mentioned, was being elusive. He could take the rush and not even get touched back there and slide or get out of bounds. That was one of the best parts out of his game. They gave him a couple shots last week. Again, he hasn't played in about 10 days, so he had basically almost a bye to get ready for this one since they played last Thursday night. Right. So the shoulders had 10 days to heal. He has 4 touchdowns through 5 weeks. That is the lowest of his career, obviously. Absolutely. If you've been keeping up with Russell. 2 for 15 last Thursday on 3rd down. That's not going to win you many football games. So coming into tonight, hopefully he's a little bit healthier, because if not, it's going to be a long night for Denver on the road. Maybe they get the run game going a little bit here tonight. That's something the Chargers are going to try to do. They ran for 240 yards last week in the win at Cleveland. So we'll see if both teams decide to run the ball. I know the Broncos dealing with some injuries. No Javonte Williams. They'll get Latavius Murray for the first time in a Bronco uniform tonight. So the Chargers had lost 6 straight coming into last season on Monday Night Football, but they ended that streak. The Broncos have lost their last 6 games on Monday night. So both of these teams have had their Monday night struggles, but the Chargers brought it close to that last year. We'll see if the Broncos can end their 6-game skid on Monday Night Football here tonight. So is there anything you're looking for in particular here with the Broncos and the Chargers in a typical AFC West matchup, a division that a lot of us thought was the prime division in the National Football League coming into this season? Could all 4 teams make the playoffs was all the talk amongst everyone there. It hasn't lived up to those expectations, but what do you see tonight with the Chargers and the Broncos?
I think we're going to see an offense in the Chargers that I think is going to tear Denver up. I don't think Denver has a legit shot, barring, of course, some injury, of beating the Chargers. I think with the players that they have there, the Chargers, the Mike Williams, Eckler, they still have Keenan Allen that hasn't even returned yet.
Oh, he's sitting on my bench. We talk fantasy football. I had him for 6 weeks.
And then you have Herbert, who, he's at the prime of his career. He's ready to go. I just don't think that there's anything Denver can do to stop them. If you're playing fantasy, I think a good guy to pick up is Joshua Kelly. Great. He looks like he's the guy who's going to be the number 2
looks good too,
in case Eckler goes down with an injury. He's the guy you want to have.
And we saw Justin Jackson when Eckler went down last year. He filled into that role and almost put up duplicate, if not better, numbers in that offense with Mike Lombardi as the offensive coordinator. I agree with you. Josh Kelly looks really good with the ball in his hands. If anything were to ever happen to Eckler, where's maybe some fantasy advice? Yeah, make sure you have him as a handcuff, even if you have Eckler in fantasy. He looks good with the ball in his hands. Is there a player you're watching closely tonight? Is there anyone that you're looking to have a big game here in this one? Any X factors?
Nobody I'm looking in particular to have a huge game. I am interested in how Denver, now that they have this three-headed horse,
Yeah, that's right.
who's the horse that they give the reins to? I mean, there's Mike Boone, there's Latavius Murray, and then there's Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon's obviously had his issues with holding on to the ball. Mike Boone is not very inspiring, and Latavius Murray, let's just be honest, he's not exciting either.
He's a journeyman, right? He's been almost
But he's
everywhere
consistent.
now. He is consistent.
So I'm interested in seeing what they do with that. Last week they gave the ball, I think Melvin Gordon 11 times. He didn't cough the ball up, but he almost had one.
Yes, he did. Close.
So if you're the Denver Broncos and you have Russell Wilson not cooking, you have
Definitely not. He's out of the kitchen. He's
not even in the kitchen at this point.
Not.
You have Melvin Gordon who can't keep the ball. At this point, you're just looking for somebody to act like they know what they're doing there. And so I'm going to be really interested to see what they do with that running back committee. If there's a guy that they're going to say, look, you take the reins, because obviously the guys we have can't do it. So I'm interested in that. And then I would say Joshua Palmer, who's the other wideout that they've sprinkled in since Keenan Allen's been out. He's performed admirably, but I think he's sneaky for a touchdown tonight. I could see that definitely happening.
I was going to ask you here in our questions, I was going to say, is there anyone you have that's going to score a touchdown tonight or first touchdown of the game? But Josh Palmer, I like that. And if you like those odds, they have a great return on that one as well. And we saw he was very impactful last year when he was able to get in the game near the end of the year for the Chargers. And again, this year just getting a little bit more. I thought he'd be a little bit more effective, but again, Herbert dealing with the rib cartilage and Gerald Everett being a little bit of a presence in that passing and receiving game as well. So they've got some stuff going on. I'm with you there. So what do you think? First touchdown? Would you go with Josh Palmer? Be a big payout there. Or are you going anytime touchdown for Josh Palmer?
I think anytime touchdown.
I like that.
I'm going to go with Everett for the first touchdown.
Everett, I like that. I like that. Jared Everett for the first touchdown. Well, with that, let's get into our pick'ems and over-unders, little lightning round here on DETV as we get ready for Monday Night Football. Kickoff now an hour away on ESPN with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman doing some Monday Night Football here this year. I like that crew. So let's get it started here. You ready, Matthew?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. More passing yards, Russell Wilson or Herbert? And that could be an easy one, but you never know. So we'll see.
Easy one for me. I'm going with Herbert.
Herbert, I'm going with Herbert as well. Rushing yards, Austin Eckler or Melvin Gordon?
Eckler.
Eckler as well. We got some good ones here. Receiving yards, Mike Williams or Cortland Sutton. Mike Williams dealing with Patrick Surtain there in the secondary. Going to be maybe a tough night for him, but I'm playing against him in fantasy, so he'll probably score 2 touchdowns. Who are you taking there, Mike Williams or Cortland Sutton?
I think Cortland Sutton has a better game.
I'm going to go with Mike Williams to hopefully jinx the fact that I'm playing against him tonight.
I like that.
Let's get to some over-unders now, Matthew. Rushing and receiving for Austin Eckler combined, 101.5 yards. Over-under?
Over.
Over. I'm going to go over as well. Rushing and receiving for Melvin Gordon combined 70.5 yards.
I'm going under.
I'm going under too. Mike Williams, 68.5 yards receiving.
Under.
Over. Got to jinx it up. Jerry Jeudy, 50.5 yards receiving.
I'm going to go under.
I'm going to go over maybe one big play if Russell Wilson can somehow get the ball that far. We'll see. Defensive or special teams touchdown tonight? What do you think?
No, I don't think it happens.
No, I'm going to say no as well. We talked about first touchdown. You went with Gerald Everett.
Yep.
I'm going to go, let's see here. With my luck, it will probably be Mike Williams, but I'm not going to say Mike Williams here.
Right.
I'm going to go with Austin Eckler for first touchdown. I know he's probably less odds there, but I'll take the low payout. And now let's get to our picks here for the game. Broncos at the Chargers. The line started at 4.5. It's now down to 3.5. Some late money heading to Denver's way here tonight on the road. Who's your pick, and are you taking them to cover or just straight up to win here tonight?
I'm going Chargers. I'm taking them to cover.
Yep. I'm with you there. I'm taking the Chargers. You convinced me just being on the desk with you talking about the Broncos and the Chargers.
That's either a good thing or a bad thing.
Right, to take the Chargers. So I'm going to take the Chargers as well. As always, Dennis, who do you like tonight? You know, they might have shut the door on us. Usually, Chargers, there it is.
There we go.
3 Chargers, we're sweeping the board. That's never good for the Chargers that are playing tonight when everybody picks them, but we'll take it.
But I'm new,
tonight.
so.
That's right.
There you go.
The Chargers, it's going to switch it up here tonight. But all 3 of us are taking the Chargers. Matthew, again, before we close out here on Monday night, One more game tomorrow is the Lakers and the Warriors. It's going to be the Warriors ring ceremony tomorrow night. They'll be getting those rings that they had the chance of winning back in July. Anthony Davis said he's looking to spoil that ring ceremony tomorrow night. Just let's talk about the Lakers for a second, just because I feel like when you're in the media, you have to, right?
Right,
Everybody
absolutely.
talks, you have to spend some time on the Lakers. That's just protocol here in the media. What do you think about the Lakers this year? They obviously made a few moves, nothing too big. Ham now in there to lead the way. Russell Westbrook, some talk coming off the bench, leading that second unit. Would you do that with Russell Westbrook? What would you do with that team, and how do you see them? How do you see their season going this year with LeBron James?
I would blow the team up.
Blow it up.
I'm not a fan of that team, how it's made. I think they didn't really improve themselves from the shooting outside. I worry about Russell Westbrook's attitude. I mean, there's been some things there that I just, even last year, I don't know if I bought into. And I just think Anthony Davis, whether we like it or not, he's one of the most talented big men of his generation, but he seems to always get injured. Every year.
Every year. I've been saying it for years.
Never played 82 games his whole career.
No. Never. And again, it's so frustrating for me too, because I didn't like when they made the trade, the Lakers, and again, I don't really care what the Lakers do, but they made the trade to bring in Anthony Davis, etc., and missed whatever time, but they got that bubble championship. So they got the one championship, and that kind of almost maybe justifies the trade in itself. So what do you think about that bubble season with the Lakers and stuff like that? I was just saying, a very interesting season. I mean, you got to count it as a championship and everything like that. What did you think of that year?
I mean,
Jason, I'm sorry. Jason, where you at? McCall, I don't know.
I mean, look, I thought the bubble championship is valid. I respect the bubble championship. But this is the same bubble where we saw, guys just go crazy. I mean,
it was like how they were playing like an elementary school court. Like it looked like to me. It looked like it was.
Paul George couldn't hit anything.
Yeah. Jamal Murray looked like.
It was Jordan. Electric. Yeah, you had T.J. Warren who was playing out of his mind. So it's like
the Suns won 10 in a row to close out their regular season. Wow, it seems like 100 years ago.
Yeah, it does.
But what an interesting series that was. Let's just quickly shift focus before we close out to the team they're playing against. That's the defending world champions, the Golden State Warriors. It seems like every year there's something going on with them in the beginning of the year. We saw it a couple years ago, Durant and Draymond. They ended up splitting up, causing a big thing there. And now we saw something a little bit similar the last few weeks. The video came out of Jordan Poole and Draymond Green getting in a scuffle at practice, a one-way scuffle, I should say, as Draymond landed a punch on Jordan Poole in there. The video, if you haven't seen it, it's out there. It was a pretty powerful punch there from Draymond Green.
Yeah.
Jordan Poole, though, got his money a few days ago after the entire incident. They lock up Andrew Wiggins as well. What are you thinking about the Warriors this year? Will that have an effect on them long term, everything that they've had to deal with this last couple weeks?
I don't think it has an effect on them long term. I think for the season, long term for the franchise, I don't think Draymond Green's going to exist.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think Jordan Poole is the future there, and I think that was a situation in which the old lion challenges the young lion, and the young lion didn't toe the line that the old lion wanted to hear, so that was the punch. And that stuff happens. It
does, more so than people would realize.
Yeah, it really does. So I would like to say that it's a lot there, but again, this is how these things happen. There's small fractures, and then they become huge gapes. So I do believe that Draymond Green is probably maybe this year going to have his swan song with them. I think he's frustrated. I don't think he sees a path where he's going to keep his same role
and get the money. I think he's looking for a little bit more money as
Absolutely, he's looking for more money. And he's seeing Wiggins get the money he's getting. He's seeing Poole get the money he's getting. And whether we like it or not, if you're Draymond Green, you got to give it up to Jordan Poole. I mean, he left school as a sophomore, took a chance on himself, late first-round pick. No one thought he should have went pro, including myself.
We all make those. That's the business.
That's the business, right? And look, he bet on himself and he won.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, I get what Draymond Green's trying to do with the politics within the team, structure. But at the end of the day, Jordan Poole's the future, unfortunately for him. And I think he's starting to see that the handwriting's on the wall, that he's going to take a back seat. And I don't think he likes it very at all.
I think that's exactly what's going on in Golden State. And again, before we wrap up, one last question for you, Matthew. Thanks for joining us. And you can catch all his work on thedraftreview.com. Again, it's really early. We like to just do this just for, for fun here.
Absolutely.
Is there an early pick that you have for the NBA, if you were to pick an NBA Finals matchup today? And again, we won't even really look at this. There's so much to unfold, and we haven't had a chance to dive deeper into our season previews. But if I had to ask you, put you on the spot right now, Who do you have in the NBA Finals in 2023?
I would say Bucks Warriors.
Bucks Warriors.
Yeah, I think the Bucks. I think they're gonna have a really good year, and I think I'm also interested in the Nets. See how they do.
Yeah, we talked about them before we went on the air, and we'll talk about them, I'm sure, as the season goes on. And we both agree that a lot relies on Ben 10, if you will. I don't know, again, what his full name is. We forget. But some interesting stuff going on there. If he could somehow get on the court, we saw him a little bit in the preseason. They saw some flashes there in one game, then the next game, a little off. So we'll see. A lot to unravel with Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, a lot of unknowns and variables that you just can't account for as the season goes forward.
They really are a grab bag over there.
And again, Middleton's still recovering from that wrist injury. I believe today, he's going to be out a couple more weeks trying to get that ready, maybe even 4 to 6 if I remember correctly. So hopefully he'll get better. And again, the Bucks lost without him in that playoff run last year to Boston. Still took them to 7 games. So again, Milwaukee, definitely a team to look out for in the East. And if we had to pick a team there, I'm going with the Warriors in the West. I think we have a Warriors-Clippers Western Conference Finals. That's what I would go with the West. Also, you never know what the Grizzlies could maybe make that jump. They were kind of that team last year and fell a little bit short. They ran into a buzzsaw in Golden State. But I'm going to go Golden State and the Clippers. And then in the East, I'll go Bucks and the Sixers. Give me the Sixers at the East Conference Finals. But again, we're going to talk about that and a lot more as the season progresses. All 3 of us, we're picking the Chargers tonight to win, to cover. You still got time. Head on over to Delaware Park, get your bets in with the Chargers here tonight. So Matthew, again, thank you so much for joining us here on DETV. Is there anything else you'd like to share with everybody at home here as we get ready for Monday Night Football and the NBA season on the horizon tomorrow night?
Yeah, just sit back and enjoy it because we're about to have a great sports week. NBA's coming back. You got college coming around the corner. So, yeah, we're about to have fun.
It is going to be a great week, especially here in Philly. You got the Eagles last night over the Cowboys. Tomorrow night, the Sixers open up. The Phillies are in the NLCS this week. It is an exciting time to be a Philadelphia sports fan. So for Nick Alessandrini, Matthew Maurer, Dennis Pritchett, and Ivan Thomas, we will see you next time Thursday night right here on DETV ahead of Thursday Night Football. Let's have a good one tonight. Let's have a good Monday Night Football game, Chargers and Broncos on ESPN. We'll see you Thursday.